Okay, so let's get started. Let's get started with this and see where we get to. Um, Before I do start, one other thing I should mention about assumptions that we make. So obviously, I'm doing this in Node.js and I'm doing it using TypeScript. Those are both kind of big assumptions. It may be that we don't want to use, Node.js, TypeScript, whatever. But those things, again, that comes into the sort of choices that we're going to make those choices before we start. We can't test drive the choice of Node.js versus .NET or Go or whatever. That's a decision that has to be taken. There are various reasons why you might want to choose one rather than the other. Not going to kind of go into that now. For the moment, we're going with Node.js and TypeScript. So, just a reminder, our requirements, API available over HTTP, given a movie ID, allow votes to be registered for the movie, given a movie ID, retrieve the movie name, ID, number of votes, and rating from the movie database. I don't think it necessarily really matters which one we do first, but I'm going to go. Just to be, I feel drawn towards retrieving the data, and for that reason, I'm going to do the posting the data first, just to see if it just proves to be, awkward or not. So anyway, we can go here. We can do. So I've got a little template set up in IntelliJ to allow me to create a describe context it block. So I'm going to say describe movie ratings app, and I'm going to say the context is going to be register vote. Let's make that vote for movie. Vote for movie. And we'll say it should accept my vote. And so for here, what we're going to probably need to do is something along the lines of, we're going to say request, we're going to assume there's going to be some sort of app type thing. That, I don't know if I can, will I be able to auto import that? No, I can't auto import that, but what I can do is say import request from Supertest. I can say request.post. And let's say we've got a movie that is, let's say it's going to be movie, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if this is kind of REST based, then movie denotes the type of thing we're talking about. Movie's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and I might put after that. So I could do something like that. That would be kind of like I think a reasonable way of kind of doing that. If we're doing kind of post, if you're doing post movie, you'd expect it to create a new movie. You wouldn't. It's not really kind of obvious what that would be doing, but that as an endpoint seems reasonable. We don't actually need. I don't think we need a body for that. We're not now. What would we kind of again? Here's I guess the awkwardness here. How do we know? Do we care what happens to that vote after it's been accepted? I kind of feel like that's something that we can worry about a little bit kind of later for the moment. So we'll just kind of say expect 200. And we'll do something like that. We'll make that a wait. We'll make that async. Because I've got ESLint and Pretty all kind of hooked up, it means it'll format files and stuff. I can now run that. If I just click on the button there, run that. That'll fail because obviously we don't have an app. I'm going to edit that and just put the watch option in there. So I can define an app. Let's see what happens if I do that. Create variable app. Okay, so now we've got an app. Let's app equals new movie app. So now that should presumably fail for a different reason. So now it's failed because we don't have a movie app, so we can do that. We can say create class movie app. That will presumably now so straight away I kind of feel like I've kind of started to I've gone into autopilot and I've made a mistake. Have I made a mistake? Kind of perhaps make some assumptions. Anyway, what app doesn't want to be an instance of movie app? App needs to be something which is going to be some sort of HTTP type server, which is kind of more like the kind of whether we're going to be an instance of Express or some other Express-like application, Express-like thing. So that's kind of not really kind of what I want there. But what I can do, let me undo those changes. Let me undo those changes. Say which is not a new movie app. What have we got installed here? So we don't have Express installed. Let's install it. Let's stick Express in there. We can, and it'd be interesting to see if we can. I'm saying we'll just put Express in there. We could use something else. But it'd be interesting to know if I do put Express in there, is it something we can change later? Is it something that we can use the tests to, allow us to change later? So no, that's going to be not a dev requirement. I don't think, do we need typeset Express? Let's try it, see. Can't remember now whether Express brings its own types or not. Nope, that all looks good. Okay, so what dependency that should go up into the dev dependencies. Okay. So we can now go back to here and maybe let's say app equals Express, and we can import that from there. And now we should find. Okay, so we're getting 404 not found, and we can put there app.use and I'm putting the use there deliberately because it'll work. So I could do that. Can I do that? So what's the middleware function? Rec res.json res.send. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So now I've got that kind of passing. It's not doing anything. So I wonder if we can. I wonder if that just means we need to kind of. We could park that for the moment. We don't have any other reason to change that yet. I don't think. We could contrive an example and say, we should get back the number of votes, or we should check that this internal thing has happened. But there's nothing really that's kind of forcing us to change that. So I'd be tempted to kind of leave it as it is. So I'm going to actually go. I'm going to leave that just like that, and just kind of go on to the other kind of requirement, and then just maybe we'll come back to this post one and see what we need to do there to. To kind of move that forward. So, given a movie ID, retrieve the movie name, ID, number of votes, and rating from the movie database. So let's say context retrieve movie details. It should, and let's put here context, movie exists. Should retrieve details. That's going to be async. And again, we're going to do awaits request app dot get movie 1 2 3 4, and that's going to say expect 200. And I guess we can now sort of make an expectation on the body there, what that should return back. And I think we've said it should return the ID, a name, and the name here is going to be TDD movie. Let's call it the TDD movie. The TDD movie. It's going to get back the number of votes, which is going to be, in this case, 5, and it's going to get back a TMDB rating, which is going to be 6.4. There we go. So we should be able to now try these out again. We're going to get an error there because we can't find the app again. We can come back to here, and in fact we can go there, we can do Alt-Enter, create variable. We can say that equals express. So that's good. So now we've got a failing test. And we can say app.use. In fact, I mean, we could even just do, we don't even need to put the URL in there, we can just do app. That, and do res.json. We can take all of that, put it in there, and now we're passing. So we've got so our requirements there, as defined by this. We've got something that is kind of seemingly sort of satisfying those. I mean, it's obviously wrong, and there's various, for us to minimise that, there's various reasons why we can see this is wrong. We're hard coding responses. Right, actually, I can get rid of that. So that should test all pass. So with hard coded responses, that's just doing a res.send, and it's not even kind of like matching the URL. Here we're hard coding the data there, that's not even kind of matching on a URL. We've hard coded all of this stuff. Yeah, that's hard coded in the response. We've got two instances of the Express app. So we haven't really defined an application yet. So we could sort of see if we can kind of extract that into something more useful. I wonder if we can do that. Here. So if we do refactor, can we do extract method? Extracted, create movie app. So we've still got 2 tests passing. So that means we should be able to presumably replace that also with create movie app. Test still pass. We can, again, what are the refactoring tools? Move, cannot perform refactoring there, okay, fine. Refactor, pull members up, what's that going to do? Okay, so we can't do that, but maybe we can do something like, yeah, we can do that. Okay, so one of our tests has failed. Let's have a look at our tests. Okay, so that's quite good. That's quite good. So one of our tests is passing, one of our tests is failing. Let's try dragging that up into there as well. Oh no, hang on, wrong one. That's what we want to move. Let's move that up into here as well. Okay, so we've now managed to kind of create. We've got one application now rather than sort of two. So we've removed some of that duplication, but now we've got problems. So that's kind of forcing us to address the issue around the URLs. So we could put that in there like that. Now that works. We could do other things to kind of force us to kind of specify the URL here. I don't know whether it's worth us. So if we're being kind of complete about this, we'd write additional tests. We can almost sort of say these are the sort of acceptance tests. This is kind of like meeting the requirements. There are other kind of maybe implicit requirements from this that would say actually this shouldn't work if you do a get, it should respond back with a invalid method or something like that. So we can drive out, we can stop us from using use and instead force us to use post and force us to use get here and force us to put the URL in here. I'm going to, so that would be just writing tests that say it shouldn't respond like this, shouldn't respond like that. I wouldn't include those in this set of tests because this set is describing what the application should do. This hopefully is kind of when you look at the tests here, hopefully this is describing this kind of matches up to the requirements. If we start adding in all of the negative cases that we need to drive out the design of to force us to change these things, that's going to make this look confusing and it's going to make it hard for us to see what were the requirements and what weren't. So I would probably maybe kind of even you could even do something along the lines of context acceptance tests. Maybe you could do something like this. Someone's going to criticise me for this and say this is rubbish, but we could do that, and we could then say something like context technical tests or whatever. Call that whatever you want. I'm not sure if there's a better name for that. And we could put something. We could take the same thing again. We want to say vote for movie. Context vote for movie context incorrect method HTTP method, and we could do something along the lines of it should return 404. Maybe should that be what it returns? Let's try it. It should return 404, got 200. So if I change that to post expected 404, we got so interesting. So that is actually, I think, possibly because of that. So if I kind of do that, then our technical test now passes. So actually, by putting that in there, we've actually just kind of forced us to also specify the path here, because the fact that path is kind of not there is breaking our 404 test. So we could take that code from there, we could add that into here, and now maybe, no, it's still saying use, so that wants to be get, and that's, there we go. So yes, we added a third test there that forced us to make a couple of changes. That last one, that's not really, there's no requirement for, explicitly for this, but it's kind of implied by some of the decisions that we're taking. So it kind of feels right that we've kind of done it, but now, next thing. Obviously, we've got this. The issue we've got now is we've managed to remove some of the duplication. We've forced us to add in both the methods and the paths, but we've now got the issue where we've still got this hard-coded data here, and we've also got this hard-coded number field here. So I kind of feel like the next test I would like to add in there to retrieve details. Let's put let's put in here movie 1 2 3 4 exists, and let's also do movie 5 6 7 8 exists. So now we're going to say, if we retrieve that, and this should return let's call it the BDD movie. That doesn't get as many votes, obviously. Whatever. I don't know why I found that funny. But we've got another test, and that's failing, and it's failing because we've hard coded the response here. We've got no way of processing that ID. So the first thing we need to do is probably change that to be a parameter. So we'll put that as movie ID. And then we can do something on the lines of if rec.params.movieID equals 1 2 3 4, then do that. Otherwise, 5 6 7 8, and that's going to be the BDD movie that had 5 ratings. What's going on with that? 4 ratings. 4 ratings, and it got 5.4. That doesn't like that. Why doesn't it like that? Comparison appears because the type of string have no number. So that's going to get us that as a string. What do we want to do there? Let's put it. Let's just do it. That's the easiest thing. So now we've forced us to deal with the fact that we had a static hard-coded response and no flexible parameter ID. We've still got, so that kind of feels like kind of quite a nice thing. And now we can look at this and think, well, actually, what about this? We know that's wrong. We know that should be something else. But what should it be? And I think this is the first point where I feel that TDD starts to help. I want to say that TDD is helping with the design process, and I'm not sure that I can objectively say that, or whether it's just the patterns that I see that I can look at. But when I look at this, I think, yes, I know I need to deal with it, but I kind of feel like I don't want to have to deal with it in the context of all this HTTP stuff. This seems to be all about HTTP. I just feel like I want to delegate the responsibility of this to something else. Yeah, that's basically it. I just feel like I want to delegate the responsibility for it. It feels like a different level to me. So I want there to be some form of what I would describe as a service, and that when you make this call and say, get movie ID, I would then say, service.getMovie, passing the ID, and then expect to get back a load of data that I can pass back. I don't, I could write I could just write everything here. I could just kind of, deal with the whole thing about kind of, how we're going to do this. But at some point, we're going to be, I guess we could, we could say, let's assume we had a list of, I guess in fact even before, so without kind of going there, let's try and do it all kind of here for the moment. So we'll say const movies equals, and it's going to be an array, and we're going to have, that's going to be a movie, and that's going to be a movie. And we're going to say here res.json movies.find movie.id equals pass int rec.params.movieid. So our test still pass. So that I realised there that I wanted to create an abstraction. I wanted to create an abstraction to a service, and actually I guess in doing this, I'm kind of proving that you don't actually have at this point. It's not TD isn't forcing me to do that. It's not even necessarily encouraging me to do that, because I can just kind of add that here. So it's not. It's perhaps. Yeah, there's perhaps too many of my, patterns and preconceptions that are kind of making me do that. I'm going to pause that here and think about that. Think about that a bit more, and come back and look at it again. Okay, so I'm going to do one more little bit on this for the moment. So one of the things that might kind of might force us to think a little bit about the design of our code is, so at the moment, because everything's defined in one file, it's kind of obvious where this data is coming from and where this data is coming from, because we can see that at the top of the page here, top of the file. But the fact that's in the same file is kind of a little bit incidental, because to run this as a proper application, we would want to extract that to a separate file. So we could do that now to kind of just to kind of prove the points here. And call that movie app.ts. So we could do. Oh, let's only move the one thing. Hang on a minute. Let's do that. Let's also then move that. Refactor move. Oh no, not copy. Move factor move. Move to there. So So we don't need to export that now because that's local value. Go back into here. That should all still pass. Let's check that. All of our tests still pass. So now we've got a situation where the details that we're checking in our tests are not defined here. They exist somewhere else. And they exist here, hard-coded in here. So in some respects, it makes this data look magic. And that's something which that data shouldn't look magic. So we should expect the data that we're asserting on here. Really, we should expect that to be something which is defined as part of our test. So we're setting something up and then testing it. That's a kind of I think a nice, that's a good sort of test design type thing. So if we see a situation like this where we're just asserting on data magically, that kind of suggests that some of the data that we're looking at is in the wrong place. And the thing is, we can actually solve that relatively easily by moving this back. If we refactor that, move that back to the to app.spec.ts. Refactor that. So now we're exporting that. I'm gonna remove the export off that. And what I'm going to do in here, because now that's kind of got an issue because movies doesn't exist. But what I can do there is make that a parameter. No, that doesn't work. That's not what I wanted. Made it a parameter in the wrong place. I actually want that parameter to be up here. And what I could do here is actually just say we're going to make that type movie, and I'm going to export a type here. Type movie equals, it's going to have an ID, which is going to be a number. I'll leave it at that for the moment because there's nothing. And then what I can do here is I can take that. I can put that at the top here. And now we can go and we can actually pass that in. In fact, actually, we don't need a database for that. And we can actually pass in a. Let's actually pass in just the actual data itself. So we'll take that, and we'll pass that into here, and we'll pass it into here, and we'll also pass it into here. And then I'm going to get rid of that because we don't need any of those. That doesn't need anything to work. This doesn't need that to work. And this doesn't need that to work. But now we have, so it is showing us here that we've got properties that don't exist on type movie, so we can add those in. So if we go to movie app, we can just add those in there and put that is of type string, that's of type number, and that is of type number. So now that should hopefully stop complaining, and our tests should still pass. And now we can get rid of that. So what have we done there? We've created some tests that are using Supertest, and we're testing, and we've basically made a tiny little Express application that's got 2 endpoints, both of which pass our tests, which is great. And we've also managed to make it so that some of the data now is it's a little bit more obvious kind of where the data that we're asserting on, it's a bit more obvious kind of where that data is coming from. And just to prove that still works, we can change that to vote 6, and we should hopefully see that test now fail. We can see that fail. If we change it back to 5, it now passes again. So that feels like a useful place to stop. I still think we've got I think a long way to go. We can see that our voting mechanism clearly doesn't work. It's not actually doing anything really. We're not getting data from the movie database, and we're not actually persisting. The votes aren't being kind of persisted or anything. But apart from that, it kind of looks vaguely all right. And yeah, but it'll be interesting to see if we can do other things that force us to change us, or either force us to change the design, or encourage us to change the design, or make us want to change the design. So yeah, we'll see where we go.